episode is brought to you by SteelRoot, a national leader in helping companies meet cybersecurity compliance requirements and prepare for CMMC. Their experienced team of engineers and consultants assist organizations of all sizes to implement and manage IT systems that meet the technical requirements in DFARS and CMMC. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of 123 CMMC. My name is Dana Mantilia. I will be your host today, and our guest is Andre Correa, and he is with Malware Patrol. Hello, Andre. How are you?
Hey, all good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your company?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder of Malware Patrol, and basically what we do is that we collect information on attacks on the internet. So it can be ransomware, it can be phishing, it can be DDoS attacks, any kind of attacks. And we do, the collection and monitoring of this data and correlation of this data. Then we sell the data to companies who want to use that to protect themselves or to put this data in their services, like antivirus companies or threat intelligence platforms, SIEMs, and companies like that. So basically, that's what we do. We're a threat intelligence company. And we are in the business since 2005, even before threat data and threat intelligence was a thing. That's when I started it. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell.
That's great. That's great. You must have a couple of good stories to tell, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Today, we're going to talk about ransomware, the new hot button. Everybody's talking about ransomware, but they don't really understand exactly how it is. So our first question is going to be, so what is ransomware?
Okay, so basically ransomware is a kind of malware, which is any software that was developed with malicious purposes. So ransomware specifically is put in computers to encrypt files, and encryption is a way to encode the files so nobody can open the files. So the files are all scrambled and encoded, and the owner of the ransomware, the person who created it, is the only one who has the key to open these files. Mm-hmm. So basically ransomware infects a computer, encrypts important files. It can be doc files, Excel files, it can be databases, it can be all sorts of files. And then once those files are encrypted, the owner of the ransomware will ask for a ransom payment to decrypt the files. So basically, that's what ransomware is.
And how is ransomware being dispersed, or how is it getting onto within these companies, or how is it getting sent around?
Well, there are many ways. Some of the most common ones are either somebody is tricked to click on a link like via phishing email or a phishing website, and a software is downloaded, and this software will either be the ransomware or a downloader who's going to go somewhere on the internet and download the ransomware itself, or it can be just by the hacker exploiting some vulnerability on the server or a system for the company. Those are the most common ones. So it's either a technical vulnerability that is exploited, or just social engineering through some phishing or business email compromise, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And this is why I tell everybody it's very important to do some training with your people, make sure they are aware of what they should and should not be clicking on.
Definitely, yeah.
So what should a company do if they wind up with a ransomware attack?
Okay, so that's a very, very serious situation. And the first thing I would say is don't panic. The problem is there, the incident is there, so panicking will not help. Depending on the size of the company, you're going to have more or less resources to deal with that. And I'll try here to be as generic as possible because there are different audiences. But basically what you want to figure out is, well, where or which computers are infected by the ransomware. What usually happens is people figure out they're infected by ransomware because they go to their files and the files are not there. They were renamed with strange extensions in their computers or in the shared folders, right? And then they will figure out, hey, there's something wrong, and they call whatever person is in charge of IT, and they figure out they got infected by ransomware. The other way is some ransomware would just infect your computer and will pop up a message saying, the ransom message saying, hey, you were infected, you have this amount of time to pay the ransom and to decrypt your files, otherwise the files will be lost forever. So first thing to do is don't panic, figure out which computers were infected, and unplug those computers from the network. Basically, nothing is going to be trustable anymore until you do the full incident response cycle to figure out what happened, which vulnerability was exploited, or if somebody clicked on the wrong link, which computers were infected. Remember, there may be other things, not just ransomware. There may be, I don't know, other Trojans. There can be some backdoors that were left behind. There can be a lot of other stuff. So it's not just a ransomware problem, but it's a problem like how did it get into your network and which computers were infected. Those computers should be totally removed from the network. Don't turn them off. Just leave them there. Because if you turn them off, then when you turn them back on, first of all, you lose forensic data, right? When you turn them off, everything that is in memory is going to be gone forever. Second, when you turn them back on, some families will notice that the computer was restarted, and they will either delete randomly some files, and those would be gone forever, or they can penalize you by like just destroying files and things like that. So live in there. There's not much you can do about that. And figure out which computers are infected. The next step is, okay, I understand this is a very, very sensitive situation. I absolutely advocate for not paying ransom under pretty much any circumstances, but that may not be possible. You know, if you don't have backup of your files, like your database was encrypted and you rely on that for your business. I understand there's certain situations where you have to deal with that. If you were there, I'm very sorry, because now you're dealing with criminals, and even paying, there's no certainty, there's no guarantee that you're going to get your files back. Remember that you are paying a criminal, and that's one of the reasons I am absolutely against it. So you're giving money to cybercrime, which would just feed it to be bigger and bigger. And second, giving money, paying ransom means that they will send you a file, they will send you a computer program, right? They will send you some software that supposedly will do the decryption. So you're not just like relying that this person will really send you the decryption software, but also the decryption software will work. And now you're running some criminal software in your network again, right? So do you really want to run more bad software in your network? Isn't that enough? Okay, so let's go here. You don't want to pay ransom. So let's suppose you don't want to pay ransom. You just isolate the computers. I would say make backups of the files that were encrypted. Maybe in a few days you change your mind or you need some of those files. You know, make backups of those. Keep and save the encrypted files. Then you can turn the computer off. Then you can do all the reinstallation and stuff like that. Pray that your backups are working and just get back to work, right? Cool. So don't lose the encrypted files. Everything goes well. You don't need that anymore. Some days later, just delete it and live your life. But if you're going down the road of like paying ransom because your backups are not good, or you have no backups, or you feel like some files are so important that you want them faster than backup will get them to you, don't communicate with the criminal through your own network. The person may or may not know which company you are with. So don't use your company's email address. Create an email address in Proton Mail or whatever, Gmail or something like that, and and do the negotiation, right? But saying I work for company XYZ is just like putting a big target on you, bigger than you already have on your back. So don't do that. Don't pay ransom right away. There's going to be like a ticking clock. Some of those guys, ransomware will show like a clock going down, like you have 24 hours. Well, they want you to pay. So in the end of the day, is a negotiation, right? It's to nobody's benefit to say, well, okay, 24 hours are gone, I'm going to pay. Sometimes they will say they will double, but we've seen there's a lot of negotiation that goes on, like, okay, I want X $1,000, and then you say, I'm a small company, I can give you half of that or whatever. It's business. For these guys, it's business. So if you're going down this road, don't forget that. It's just business. They may not know who you are, and they better not know who you are, because that may mean they will understand that your files have more value than they expected, and things will get more complicated, right? I think basically that's it, really. You need somebody with IT expertise. So if you're a small company, like really small, with maybe not even an IT person or IT department, maybe you want to look for a MSSP, right? A managed security service provider company to help you with this. Those would be pretty much the first steps. Everything else really depends on your environment. Most people will be on Windows. So another thing that I totally forgot, but is important, is you isolate the computers, but also stop all the shares, because you don't want the computers or the ransomware to do lateral movement and go to other computers. So stop all the Windows shares in your network.
Okay, a couple of quick questions. So you touched on a lot of stuff there. So an incident response plan is something that everybody has to have. They have to have something in, what do we do if this does happen? You at least have to have the conversation with your staff. And you brought up a good point about not unplugging the computers. And someone who doesn't have an incident response plan may not know that they shouldn't unplug the computers and to turn the computers off, because there's such panic. And I know you said not to panic, but that's what happens is people panic. So all they want to do is they want to unplug and shut down and disconnect. But that was a very good point that you brought up. So I want everyone in the audience to remember that, to not turn the computers off. And then also you mentioned that the cyber criminal may not know which organization you're with. So can you explain to our audience a little bit about why they wouldn't know? Because I think when people receive these ransomware attacks, they think they're specifically targeted at them.
They may be, but most of them will not. So just don't turn your computer off, just to make it clear, don't turn it off, but unplug it from the network. That's important. So you don't want it to do lateral movement to other computers. To your question now is, there are very targeted attacks. So if you are a big company, this may be a very targeted attack, like we saw for the oil company that has the pipeline, the Colonial Pipeline Company, for example. That's a targeted attack, right? But if you're not, one of those big companies, most likely there's going to be a campaign that was sent to multiple victims from the list of email addresses, for example, with some phishing, right? So they're just casting a big net and trying to get, whatever they can. Most of the ransomware attacks are like that. They're not targeted to you. Target attacks are more like, okay, this company is so big that I can get a bigger ransom from them. Or this company is so big that then maybe instead of putting a ransomware there, I'm going to invade, I'm going to get their, industrial secrets and do, espionage, and then resell that to their competitors and stuff like that. So it's a different world, like what they're looking for. They may just trying to get into your network to get your, your secrets, your important files, and resell them instead of asking for a ransom. But most of the time, they will be just sending phishing emails, and whoever clicks on the link gets infected. It's a victim, and they maybe not even know where they are, or who you are, or where you are, or which company you're working for.
So that's good advice. So the good advice that I'm taking away from that is that don't assume that they know as much about you as that you probably think that they do. They probably don't. So that's good. So don't voluntarily give them more information. Only speak to them about things that they're referring to, so that way you're not oversharing information, and like you said, giving them maybe the potential idea that, ooh, wow, this is a company that they've got a lot of really valuable stuff in there. So that's really good. I'm glad that you mentioned. The new Department of Defense's cybersecurity program, CMMC, can be very confusing and overwhelming. A3 is a cloud-based collaborative environment for an organization seeking certification. A3 builds CMMC packages and has access to a marketplace of consultants, RPOs, and assessor C3PAOs. A3 creates a roadmap for each cybersecurity requirement and helps break things down step by step. Please visit cyberdataintelligence.com/A3. That. So
and I would add a quick one here. If you go down the path of paying, again, I'm against that, but if you go down the path of paying, one of the things you could do is get a few files that are not so important, those files that you don't care if they're linked somewhere else, and send to the criminal and say, hey, can you decrypt these files and send me back as a proof that you are able to decrypt my files.
That's a good point.
Otherwise, you may be just paying for somebody who doesn't even have the decryptor. They may just be encrypting files, getting the money, and who's going to force them to decrypt the files for you? Right. Nobody. So it's like a proof of life, right? For if it was like somebody was kidnapped, so do that, but do with simple files that you don't care, right? Don't send like your important database. That's not going to be a good idea.
That's really another great idea. Boy, we're getting lots of good stuff here. So now let's talk about cryptocurrency and why that's the main, payment method used here.
So the idea of cryptocurrency is because it's got this level of anonymity, right? So no cryptocurrency is 100% anonymous, but it's got a good level of anonymity. So it became kind of easier to move money around using cryptocurrencies instead of the other options, right? What the other options would be back in the day, maybe would be like gift cards or stuff like that, just smaller amounts of money. Now we're talking like ransom in the like tens or hundreds of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So it's not money that you can easily move, but cryptocurrencies are much easier for that. Although you hear people saying, well, yeah, I have to pay, I don't know, $50,000 ransom. I have the money, but you can't really buy just like $50,000 in Bitcoin just like this, because the exchangers have their limits per day of what you can do. So if you're not yet registered with the exchanger, they will impose some restrictions and stuff like that. So even working with Bitcoins, there's some restrictions, but it's easier to move money, and there is a level of anonymity that is much better, much more reasonable. For example, if you receive like the ransom in one Bitcoin wallet, and transactions are registered in the ledger, right? So you can say, okay, then I can see that the money was from this account to that account to that account to that account, and finally someday the criminal will have to withdraw it, and we're going to catch him. Not exactly. There are things called, for example, mixers that you send the Bitcoins to these companies, and what they do is like they have a lot of Bitcoins and they give back to you in another address. I'm going to say different Bitcoins, so those are not traceable anymore. So there are ways to really hide their transactions, and there's like more and more services that are also accepting Bitcoins. For example, if you are the ransomware gang, you will need some infrastructure. You probably need a command and control server, right? These are things you can pay with Bitcoin these days, right? There are other things that are supplies that you may need for your illegal venture, because they are really companies these days. They're really like ransomware as a service is a term that we use. So there's also the advantage of using cryptocurrencies for anonymity when they're paying for the services they need to keep their infrastructure. There was a lot of discussion like 2 or 3 weeks ago, people saying, well, the blame is on cryptocurrency, and for the raise in the number of ransomware attacks. I am absolutely against that. Cryptocurrency is just a tool, and if it wasn't for Bitcoin, they were specifically looking at Bitcoin. Right now, I don't know how many thousands of coins we have in the world, like 2,000, 3,000, maybe more. So putting the blame on Bitcoin is absolutely wrong. They could use, I don't know, Ethereum or any other of those cryptocurrencies. And it's absolutely impossible to stop cryptocurrencies right now. Even if governments want to say, oh, we're going to ban Bitcoin, how do you do that? That's kind of technically impossible. So the blame is not on cryptocurrencies. The blame is like on people not being prepared to first stop the attack. So your employees are not aware. You're not doing like security awareness training as you should. Then you should have an incident response plan. Then you should have your backups done right. And sure, I'm not putting the blame on the victims. Don't get me wrong, but we should all be prepared to deal with this. And a very important thing that I don't want to forget here: if you were infected by ransomware, it doesn't matter if you're going to pay or not. Report that to the FBI if you're in the United States. Report that to whatever authorities are in your country. Don't stay there in the dark. Just like, okay, I was infected. I don't want anybody to know, because I know there's like reputation issues here, right? Nobody wants to say they were infected by ransomware. But the guys who are going to help us deal with this are, information security people like myself, but also law enforcement people. So if law enforcement doesn't have the right statistics, doesn't have forensic information you can give them, then we're not going to have like real world arrests and these people being stopped. So report your incidents, ransomware or not. There are other secure incidents as well, but report to the proper authority in your country. That's very important.
That's a very good point, because I think a lot of people, you're right, they want to stick their head in the sand and pretend that it didn't happen, and if they pay the ransom, they could just go back on their merry way. But it's very important. You have to report it. So thank you for sharing that. So then the last bit: how do you recover from a ransomware attack? So now it's happened. How do you kind of get back on track?
Yeah, I guess we kind of touched it in some of the points, but I think the first very important thing is to distinguish which computers were affected and which were not, if there are any that were not, so you can keep going with those that are not infected and at least part of your business is still running. The second important thing is, as I said, I would make backup copies of the files that were encrypted just in case you need them later, you change your mind or whatever. But anything that was infected, and if you don't know it was infected, it's like suspect, and you should just reformat and start from scratch. Like, you're not going to have your computer infected with ransomware and say, okay, I removed the ransomware, I'll move on using this computer. Don't do that, because there's going to be other stuff installed there. You never know if it's going to be a backup or something. So no, you have to reformat everything. You have to go to your backups and restore the backups. And I think you need also to learn with this, right? So what happened again? It was like some social engineering, or it was a vulnerability. Because either way, you have to take measures that are not just like restoring your backups and getting your business back, but also avoiding this from happening again. So if it was social engineering, you have to really train your people, right? It's not like, oh my God, you clicked on that link and you did it wrong, and the company has big problems right now. That's not the thing. It's right. About education, not about pointing fingers. And the second part is like, if it's a vulnerability, you have to fix it, right? You have to apply the patches, or you have to talk to the manufacturer of the software or hardware or whatever it is, and have it fix it as soon as possible. Otherwise, you can get infected again, right? And I think those are really the first steps, because everything else, it really depends on the environment where people are, and there's so many possibilities. So anything else would be like in a case-by-case basis, right?
All right. Well, lots of good stuff today. That's for sure. We got a lot of important information in this. Thank you so much for that. Is there anything else you want to throw out there, or anything else you want to say share with the audience before we go?
No, I think that was very interesting. Actually, it made me, revisit some of these points. They're important for everybody, including for my own company. Like you come here and you talk about all this. Say, hey, yeah, are we doing the awareness training as you should, and are our backups all good as they should? It's very complicated. It's very intense when you know that you are infected. But again, panicking and going straight to the payment. I'm going to pay it. I want to pay the ransom. I want this to go away. It's not going to go away like that. So I know you're going to be losing money. I know you're going to be stressed, but try to follow the path of what makes sense, right? And not just like freak out and pay criminals. That's the worst thing you can do, in my opinion. And if you don't know what you're doing, look for a managed security service provider. There are many good people out there who are incident responders who deal with this on a regular basis. And, it's money well spent for you to have somebody to come and check what's going on, give you the right advice, and you're going to save a lot of time and money. So if you are not sure what you're doing, if you're not like a, information security professional, get some professional help. It's gonna pay off for sure.
Good stuff. Good advice. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and all of your lovely input. And everybody in the audience, thank you for watching. We hope to see you again on the next episode. So take care till then.
Thank you very much.
This episode is brought to you by SteelRoot, a national leader in helping companies meet cybersecurity compliance requirements and prepare for CMMC. Their experienced team of engineers and consultants assist organizations of all sizes to implement and manage IT systems that meet the technical requirements in DFARS and CMMC.